Well, here we are. Welcome, everyone. Glad to be here again. It's exciting because the fall semester is here and we have great news. We're kicking off our webinar series, and we're really excited for having today a very special guest, Dr. Joao Mordomo, originally from Brazil, but he's a global person. Actually, he's joining in from Ethiopia today, and we're so thankful for him being here. I am Dr. Jesus San Pedro. I serve as a program director and assistant professor here at Mid-America Christian University in the School of Business Leadership, and I get to be part of a wonderful faculty group that we are here. I get to lead the Master of Arts in Leadership, which is a wonderful program. And my passion is to connect the dots between the needs of leaders and the content, the people, the thinkers, the practitioners that will inspire. And that's part of what we're doing today here. And we have a very diverse base of learners at the university from around the world. And today we even have people from all over, from India, from South America, Europe, and from different places from the US. So this is pretty exciting. And we just pray that we may have a wonderful time today. I'm here in Oklahoma City. And once again, I have the honor to not only be today the host and moderator together with Dr. Kelly Resemy, who is a program director and associate professor for the MBA program here at Mid-America Christian University. And on behalf of our people, our university, we want to welcome you all to this, I would say, relaunching edition. We took a little bit of a break during the summer, but we're back here in our Leadership Connection webinar series. So glad to be here with you, Dr. Resemy.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm excited to get back to it and learn from some of the most world-class leaders that we can have this wonderful technology to connect us across the globe. So welcome. And the Leadership Connection is monthly, and it's an open space where we meet together with national and international leaders and guest speakers so that we can connect in a transformative conversation around leadership topics. And we invite all of our MACU students, graduate, undergraduate, those who are on campus in Oklahoma City or online across the world. And we hope that our alumni and faculty and staff and leaders from our communities will join us in these wonderful conversations and time of learning. And it plays a significant role as we challenge each other, we learn from each other and our colleagues so that we can grow. And our goal is to equip you on the latest and most relevant topics and share about what makes MACU's leadership model unique. And so we welcome you to this webinar, and I hope that we can take MACU to the world. And I want to acknowledge some of the key ministry and corporate leaders that are with us today. Dr. San Pedro already mentioned that we have people from around the US and around the world joining us. And so thank you for being here. And we do love our online format because it allows us to conveniently be in Ethiopia, Oklahoma City, and Kansas City, where I'm located. So around the world, and it takes place every third Thursday of the month at noon Central Time. We're 1 hour interactive, and this is our space to share. So at the end, we'll have an opportunity to interact with our guest speaker today. And if you stay to the end, you'll be eligible to participate and win a special gift.
Yes, and before I introduce our wonderful guest speaker for today, I want to mention that the reason why we're doing this is because part of our mission, or our mission here at Mid-America, is to create, to collaborate, and to innovate, to solve local and global problems for the glory of God through Jesus Christ and the good of society. So trying to integrate this idea of faith and work, not only is part of what we do here as a business school, but we're trying to intentionally allow students in our undergraduate and graduate programs to be able to do so, to integrate that. And today, I'm sure we're gonna nurture that idea a lot. I always say that we're in the business of making a difference through our faith and impacting the marketplace. Some people have called business people as the modern missionary. Let's call it, well, yeah, the modern missionaries in a sense, right? And we also want to potentially speak into the idea of there's a need to speak more and to make sure that we break down the divide between faith and work and integrate that and see in a very different way. So that's why we brought today our guest speaker, and he's going to be talking about how to change the world through business. I want to share briefly here for everybody to see how to transform the world through business. So we're going to be, Dr. Mordomo is going to be talking about what is business as mission, a concept, practice, and a movement. And also, what can business as mission do, and who can do business as mission? So Dr. Mordomo, he holds not only one but two doctorate degrees. One of them is in intercultural studies, and the other one is in the religious studies area, and with specializations in entrepreneurship and leadership. He founded and currently is the executive director for BAM Global, which is a global network that basically encourages the movement of business as mission around the world. He's also part of, he's a catalyst for the Lausanne movement related to business as mission, which, by the way, that's the space that brought us together. That was what, like 4 years ago, I think, 2019 in the Philippines. There was this global convocation for people in the marketplace that are interested in these kind of topics, and we exchanged cards. We talked a little bit, and they say we got to do something down into the future. And here we are 4 years after all that what have happened in the world, and we're here again. And he also co-founded and he's vice chair of Crossover Global, a church planting organization of over 3,700 churches. That's a big thing. And so we're excited to have you here, Dr. Mordomo. Welcome, and it's all yours for you to share. And just to remind people that at the end, we're going to get some time to, if you have any questions or comments, and he's going to be very open to share. So thank you for being here, Dr. Mordomo.
Yeah, what a pleasure. Thank you. And I think if you don't mind, I'm probably going to take the Brazilian approach. I'll end up calling you Dr. Jesus and not by your last name. And I might talk about Dr. Kelly. It's just, you know how it is, Jesus. Maybe in other areas of Latin America, we just kind of use the first name. So, so Dr. Jesus and Dr. Kelly, thank you so much. It really is an honor to be here. And I said I wasn't going to do this, but I think I am going to do this. We discussed it quickly. I'm like, yeah, that's really true. It's pretty amazing. I'm actually sitting in the bathroom in a hotel in Ethiopia because this is where the best lighting and the best internet signal I could get. So I hope that it works out fine for us to be able to continue to communicate this way. And Dr. Jesus, please feel free to tell me when my time's up. I might miss it, but I've got a little clock here, so hopefully I'll finish right on time. If I understand correctly, I've got a 25-minute opportunity here to share with you all.
Yes.
I'd love to actually segue into the presentation by just saying the reason I'm in Ethiopia has to do both with the Crossover Global organization you mentioned, which is the church planting organization, and BAM Global, which is the global network of business professionals and businesses who are passionate about fulfilling the Great Commission, transforming the world, what we're talking about by way of business. So we've got this week gathered here in Addis Ababa, 60 leaders, where our organization is about 350 people in 35 different countries. The 3,700 churches have been planted. We've got this most amazing global leadership team. So you will see, if you could walk around, I wish we could, I wish I could just go walk around and show you these amazing people who are from China and actually in China. They didn't immigrate somewhere. It's like a Chinese from China in China and an Indian from India in India. And we have, I'll just say some of the countries in our leadership: Peru and Brazil and the US, Mexico. And then we've got multiple countries here from Africa, multiple countries throughout Central Asia, Southern Asia, Southeast Asia. These people, our brothers and sisters in Christ, are giving input to this global church planting movement. And many of them, sometimes the leaders, definitely our other staff, our team in different countries in the world, are utilizing business. And the reason this is true is because so many of the countries where the gospel hasn't yet been adequately, if you can ever say that it's been adequately proclaimed, there are not churches, there's not a self-governing movement of Christians in those countries. And there are political issues, and there are religious issues, and there are cultural and sometimes broader geopolitical issues which don't allow any sort of traditional missionary to go there. And in reality, some of us are going, why would we send traditional missionaries anyway when we see the power of business to cause transformation? So I'm kind of here this week for my mixed role, both in both of those organizations. And I think that now would be a good time for me to share my screen. Is that okay? I think I've got the
Yes, you should be okay.
Administrative privileges to do that. So I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint. And are you, if I put it in present mode? All right, can you see that cover screen presenting business as mission?
Yep.
All right. So let's just roll with it. We're talking about two things. We're talking about business and mission, but let's start off by talking about business. When we talk about business, we tend to have a standard understanding. We go to our default and we'll think of something like Starbucks, and we're going to say, yeah, well, Starbucks started one little coffee shop in the 1970s in the Northwest of the United States, and they were making some pretty good coffee, and they had some creative ideas about how to treat people and serve people, and things went pretty well. So that it's that whole initial entrepreneurial journey that led to a second unit being open, and a third one, and a fourth one. And then you know where I'm going with this. Fast forward to 2023, you have a mega global multinational corporation who is all about, they're not gonna say it's all about coffee. They're gonna also talk about things like customer service. But my point is, we say business and we are going to think about something like Starbucks. But things aren't always as they seem. And I don't know if you realized in the first Starbucks slide that I showed you, it wasn't actually Starbucks. It was a not very creative entrepreneur in Palestine, where there are no Starbucks. And that's my mug. I got it when I was there. I was like, I've got to get this mug. I mean, the guy, he couldn't even come up with different colors or a better name. So it's Stars and Bucks, kind of a similar color code as Starbucks. But what he's thinking is people associate Starbucks and these colors, so that name, these colors, with coffee. So I'm going to do the same thing. But did you notice the first slide that it wasn't Starbucks? A lot of people don't. It's because things aren't always as they seem. We go to a default place, and a lot of times we shouldn't do that. And so when we talk about business as mission, we're saying, don't assume things are what you think they are. Business as usual is one thing. Starbucks is business as usual. When we talk about transforming the world through business, we're talking about something that we call business as mission. Now, you'll find other people using other nomenclatures. You'll find something called B4T, Business for Transformation. You'll find people talking about B4M, meaning Business for Mission, which is a segment, and that is more about using money, resources, revenues, profits from a business, and then investing it in conventional or typical or traditional ministries, including missions. But we're talking about the integration of business and mission. So you'll see this increasingly, BAM, business as mission. And what I want us to talk about today, very briefly, is what is BAM and what can BAM really do, and how can you do BAM should you feel so not inclined, you could feel inclined, but I'm going to use the word called. We see that God increasingly is calling business professionals to get engaged in kingdom activities by way of business. And that is not something new. That is something in a whole different seminar or a whole different class. We would talk about the biblical, both historical and theological foundation of business as mission. It's not a new thing, but God has given a renewed vision for it in the 21st century. So let's talk about it. And I want to tell you a story of two of my colleagues, Carlos and Maria, from Brazil. And their story is one that helps us understand the journey that you might be on. Maybe this is going to give you some insights into your own journey, a journey you could possibly be on. Carlos and Maria, they were from Sao Paulo, the largest city in Brazil, one of the largest cities in the world. Carlos goes to university, studies engineering. Maria goes to university, studies pedagogy, teaching. And soon after university, they get married. In that process of meeting each other and getting married, they already knew the Lord. They already loved the Lord. And so in their hearts and minds, they were thinking about possibly doing traditional missions. And so now they're married. They're in their early 20s, 23. They don't have kids. They're thinking this is a great time. And they're knocking on God's door and they're saying, God, would you want us to be missionaries? Because we'd love to be missionaries. We'll go anywhere you want. And God says, that's a great idea, but not right now. And they don't understand why, but they continue to walk with God faithfully. Carlos develops his career as an engineer, Maria as a professor. They start to have children. So they have a couple of kids. Now, just fast forward about a decade. So now they're about kind of early 30s. And they're knocking on God's door again because they're saying, you know what, God, I don't know if you noticed this, but since we weren't sure when you were going to call us, we went ahead and did some theological training as well. Part-time, a class at a time. We knocked it out. We did some cross-cultural ministry training because we think maybe we should be missionaries. Is it now? And God said, I just love your hearts, but no, it's not now. Another decade goes by. Now their kids are getting older. Carlos is established not only in his career, but he has now started an engineering business in Sao Paulo. Now they're in their early 40s. They're starting to think, God, it might be too late pretty soon. Do you want to send us now? And God said, I don't. So they didn't get frustrated. They just kept continuing to serve in their churches. They continued to raise their kids, put their kids through university. I said churches, I mean their church. They served in their local church, but they were serving other churches. They're out promoting the idea of how can we as the church engage in God's global mission. But they're going through still this kind of conventional mindset. And it seems that that's what God was seeking to change. So in their 40s, they start to understand that, what? If we had gone using a traditional ministry model, we might not have been very relevant. We might not have been very effective. We might have gotten kicked out of wherever we were. We might have been killed. We just don't know. So they're now about early 50s. And they're kind of like, God, do we even come back and ask? No, because we're kind of getting old. And God goes, you don't have to ask anymore. I'm telling you, now's the time. It's time to go. So what has happened? Their oldest son had studied business administration and was now running the business in Sao Paulo. So Carlos and Maria, Maria had just retired for the first time, they're ready to go. They've got all of their professional training and experience. They've got their family off as adults serving God. One of them's running the business. They got all their theological training, all their cross-cultural training, and they had begun to understand that God wanted to use them through their professions. Carlos as an engineer and business professional, and Maria as a teacher, as a university professor. And so now when they're saying, God, do you want us to go? God says, yes. And God says, and here's how you do it. And so they ended up becoming associated with the Crossover Global organization that we talked about earlier. In partnership with another sending organization, we engaged a business as mission investment fund, and we bought a business in one of the STAN countries. So think of the 7 countries in Central Asia that end with STAN. I'm not going to tell you which one. In fact, Carlos and Maria is not even their real names. And I think you might understand this is for security reasons. They were in a place which was almost 100% Muslim. And so even today, because we want to protect the business, we want to protect our colleagues there, we're not going to openly talk about certain things. I won't tell you the actual name of the business, but I'm going to tell you about the business. So we get two organizations together, we get an investment fund, we buy out a business and convert the business into a business as mission business. So Carlos is the managing director and he's also the chief engineer. Maria gets a job as a university professor. Now, just as an aside, Maria was working as what we would call a tent maker. She used her professional skills, not related to business, professional skills, and that could be anything, truly anything that's licit, that's not illicit. If it has to do with white powders, it's probably not something you want to be dealing with. But otherwise, arms, and if it's related to trafficking, also not that, but anything else, a professor, a lawyer, an engineer. My son is an engineer working as a tent maker. Pick your profession and then go do that where the need is greater than where you are right now. It gets you into places. Maria was a tent maker, but Carlos was both a tent maker as an engineer, and he was doing business as mission. Now, there's a picture here. You've seen it, and you might be wondering why it's there. And I want to tell you this story. After several years that Carlos was there, he was traveling by bus to one of the three cities. Well, he typically would travel by bus because they had offices in three cities. One of these nights, he's on an overnight bus ride. And remember, it's a Muslim context. So he sits down. He's got somebody sitting next to him, a Muslim from that country. And it's a place and a culture where typically you're just real straightforward. And you can ask questions that in the United States might be considered awkward. In some other countries, it might be considered awkward, but it's not for them. And so the Muslim says, you look like you might be from here, but you don't sound like you're from here. Where are you from? And Carlos says, well, I'm from Brazil. And early in this conversation, this Muslim says, are you a Christian? I mean, just like that. Because he's already thinking any foreigner in our country is either a missionary, a spy, or a trafficker of something. And actually, the worst option would be to be a missionary. In a lot of these countries, you're better off being a spy or a trafficker sometimes. And so he says, are you a Christian? Now, Carlos immediately said, yeah, of course I'm a Christian. All Brazilians are Christians. You're a Muslim, right? Because everybody from here is a Muslim. Completely disarmed this Muslim seatmate, and the conversation went on. But the Muslim was still skeptical. So he says, well, what do you do? And Carlos says, I'm an engineer. And the Muslim's thinking, now I got you. What's the name of your company? And as soon as Carlos said it, the reaction was, and Carlos said, have you heard of our company? And this Muslim said, yes, I have, and told this story, which Carlos then told me. He said, you know that city up in the Northeast that was devastated by an earthquake a few years ago? And Carlos says, oh, of course I know that city. The Muslim said, I lost family members. I lost neighbors. I lost colleagues. In fact, every single building in the city was destroyed. All of them collapsed because of the earthquake, except one. And it's the one that you all built. And then the Muslim said, why is it that we Muslims build garbage for ourselves, but you Christians did something with excellence? And Carlos said, you know, I'd love to tell you why we Christians do things with excellence. And they still had like 7 hours to go on the bus ride. A traditional missionary would not, I won't say never, but can you imagine a traditional missionary having had that type of opportunity? I can't. That just doesn't happen. The door that opened for the gospel to be presented to the Muslim that night, it was wide open. But I hope you caught what I said. That's amazing. I don't know if it's equally amazing or more amazing that a group of another religion, Muslims, recognized that there was something that was done with excellence by Christians that saved lives. This is my point. Carlos and Maria understood the power of business, the real power of business, not the power of business just to generate wealth, the power of business to transform lives, like on the bus ride, or to transform communities, to transform industries, and to transform mindsets, like what happened by virtue. That is the building. I didn't say that, but that is the building that didn't collapse. It was damaged, but it did not collapse. And you can see the devastation all around. The real power of business, stewarded by Christians, is that lives and societies and communities and nations and industries can be transformed by the power of the Holy Spirit for the glory of Christ. So what is business as mission that caused these amazing things to happen? God caused it, but BAM facilitated it. Let's talk about that first. What is business as mission? It's a concept, a practice, and a movement. This is very clear. The concept is biblical. The practice is real, and it's right now, and it's happening so much that we can clearly identify a global movement of business as mission. So here's a description to start with. I'll give a definition later, but here's a description. Business as mission, and the colors are designed to help. There's some parallelism here going on. Business as mission is the natural and healthy integration. It's natural. It should be normal for the church, and it's healthy because it causes amazing things to happen. What are we integrating? Concepts of business with concepts of mission, and activities of business with activities of mission, where the structures of business are merged with, integrated with the structures of mission, and where the people of business are the people of mission. And now you're thinking, why didn't you just say where the business people are the missionaries? And because of the parallelism, I wanted it all grammatically to line up just fine. I also was a pastor and a Baptist, no less, so I like everything to line up beautifully. And if I could alliterate, I would have done that too. And I might tell you a poem at somewhere along the way. I don't know. But look at the four things that we're talking about, the four types of integration. Business concepts and mission concepts can be integrated and should be. Business activities and mission activities. And I want to specifically talk about, when I say structures, I'm actually literally talking about the fact that businesses are legal entities. When you have a legal entity existing in a community or in a country, you get more traction and you have access to more important people. And I'm talking about government officials, for example, whether it's local level or state, if that's a thing, or province or whatever, or national level. Business structures provide credibility and cover that you can't get if you're doing ministry activity, but you don't have an association with a credible legal entity. And then, of course, the business people are the missionaries. The business people are never identified as missionaries, but their hearts are missionary hearts. And in case I don't get to say it later, I'll just say it now. The mindset behind business as mission is we're all ministers. Everyone who serves God is a minister. The Old Testament and New Testament passages, especially the obvious ones like royal priesthood, we're all a royal priesthood. What does that mean? We're royal priests. What does that mean? We are ministers of the gospel. And none of the times that phrase shows up, or any other similar ones, is addressing a select group of religious professionals. It's always about the whole body of Christ. So the business people are functioning as missionaries. And here's the bottom line. If you are a full-time Christian, you are a full-time minister. If you understand that, you will never have a crisis as a business professional thinking, I really want to serve God in a way that's more dignified. Maybe he wants me to go pastor a local church. And if anybody ever tells you that, you're going to go, you know what? I think I've got some great opportunities here to serve God, to fulfill certain commandments of Scripture that pastors in local churches don't have. They do their thing, and they're called to do that. And I do my thing because I'm called to do this. Now, what would a definition be of business as mission? Not everybody would say it like this. I put the doxological motivation first. It means glorify God. Glorify God by doing these things. It's not about transforming an industry first and foremost. That's a means to an end. It's not about saving a life in a building that doesn't collapse, or 10 lives or 100. That's amazing. But the drive behind that is we want to see Christ proclaimed and exalted among all peoples. That's God being glorified here and now and among all peoples and eternally. That's called a doxological motivation. It's for the God's glory. It's for the glory of God. So what are we doing then that gives that glory to God? Well, bam, it's strategic. I don't need to go into details on that, but I'll give one example. If you think you're going to open an IT country in a tribe of nomads in Central Asia or North Africa or the Middle East, that's probably not strategic. It could be, but it's not likely. There are different businesses that are relevant there. But if you go to the next kind of nearest city, oh, maybe IT actually is a good thing. So it's strategic. It's authentic business activities. And the reason I have to say this is because so many well-meaning missionaries in the last 40 years have gone into countries on business visas without any intention of ever doing business. And so they put themselves in this awkward situation where they have to kind of pretend like they are business people, and they're not. And people aren't stupid. So as soon as you say, well, I'm an American and I have an English school, and there's a local there who's going, I have a PhD from Harvard and I can tell that your English stinks. You are not an English professor and you don't act like you even know how to run a business. From a Brazilian context, it's like, yeah, I've got a soccer school. And they're going, yeah, but I've seen you play soccer. You don't even like soccer. And you're not a coach because you're really crappy. Excuse my language. So people are not stupid. They see when we're faking. So it has to be authentic business. And we have to clarify that, at least for now, until BAM becomes fully embraced by the church in kind of a default mode. We use our professions for the glory of God. Until that happens, sometimes we have to qualify things. So yeah, it has to be authentic. But it can create authentic ministry opportunities. And the reason I'm using it again, authentic, because on the flip side of that same coin, there are well-intentioned Christians who are business professionals, and they realize that they're going to go to another country to do their business, but they're kind of like, I'm going to miss my local church, and people aren't going to understand. Why would I just go to do business? And I need to make it look like I'm doing ministry too. And they're well-intentioned. They get there, all they do is business. They're not really trying to do anything that looks like ministry, and they might have intended to even, but they get sucked into the daily grind of running a business, and they haven't thought out, what does our team configuration look like? How do we all do certain things in the business so that we're all also ministering? So it has to be authentic. It brings transformation, and the transformation that we're talking about within business as mission, we have a unique opportunity through business to transform least reached people and peoples. Think about marginalized people or unreached people groups. I mean, ethnic groups, like Matthew 28, Great Commission, disciples of all nations. All nations, the Greek word is ethnic groups. Jesus is saying ethnic groups, not countries. So we can transform marginalized people. Marginalized people, think about the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4. That wasn't business, but that's my point to say there are marginalized groups all over the place, wherever we live. There are unreached people groups represented potentially right where you are right now. And the transformation that we're bringing is then spiritual, economic, social, and environmental. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, but I'm going to keep rolling. So can BAM really do all that? Can BAM really cause transformation of lives and communities and nations? And can it be spiritual and economic and social and environmental? If you had asked me 20 years ago when we were just starting to promote, it's only been in the last 25 years that we've been using this nomenclature and we've been really trying to promote this vision, we might have said, we think it will. We've seen a few examples where, yeah, it looks pretty good. Looks promising. Today, we're just going to say, you know what? This is absolutely real. It's absolutely true. BAM really does that. Not always, but it can when things are done well. So yes, BAM can bring about these types of transformation. I'm specifically talking about, and this is one of the special characteristics of business as mission. It's our fourfold bottom line or quadruple bottom line. You can call it a fourfold return on investment. If you're looking at it from a funding perspective, you can look at it as a fourfold type of transformation, bottom line, return on investment, impact. So because it's a real ministry, It brings a spiritual impact. Because it's a real business, it can cause economic impact. Because it's a real ministry and a real business, in any business these days, any ministry these days cares about social impact. And increasingly, and importantly, from a biblical perspective, it can cause environmental, ecological impact and transformation as well. Now, I'm going to see how quick I can roll through this. I'm an advisor to a company called Liveful. We're in multiple countries around the world. We don't identify ourselves as a business as mission company. And it's okay for me to tell you in this seminar all about Liveful. I hope you'll check out Liveful. The website's right there. We started off, I say we because I've been involved in this journey for a very long time and am still actively involved. We have developed the world's best insect repellent. And sometimes people just smile. They want to laugh and they're like, what? And we're going, yeah, we're changing the world through insect repellent. Well, when we talk about those 4 bottom lines, spiritual impact, we can clearly measure spiritual impact that's happening because Liveful exists, and because of the way Liveful does business, and because of the type of business that Liveful does. We can also measure economic impact, we can measure social impact, and we can measure ecological impact. And which example should I give you? Ecological impact, it's a nature-based product. There are no DEETs, there are no chemicals that cause people to suffer neurologically after a lifetime of using insect repellent, and it doesn't drain off into the environment, causing ecological degradation. There is a legitimate ecological impact. Economic impact, I won't go into the details on that. It's a real business, and you understand that jobs are being created and people are receiving salaries. And then there's the whole parallel when you look at the bigger ecosystem of indirect jobs that are being created. Maybe you're wondering, how does the ministry happen? The ministry happens because all of the owners and executives are Christ followers. Most of the employees are not, but this is strategic. We're looking at creating space in which the gospel can be demonstrated as well as verbally proclaimed. And it's happening day to day in multiple countries because of the fact that this company exists. Now, there's something deeper about Liveful, which is what drives Liveful is Isaiah 61. Think about Luke 4, Isaiah 61, messianic prophecy. I'm going to show it on the screen in a minute. Luke 4, Jesus fulfills the prophecy. The language is so strong, and Liveful leadership and ownership has fully embraced this vision to fulfill by way of doing excellent business and literally saving lives. You might have already made this connection, but 1 million people a year die from malaria, just malaria. If you add yellow fever and dengue and chikungunya and all of the other mosquito-borne diseases, and you realize one of the reasons is it's not that people don't have access to insect repellent. It's that they do, and they don't like it because it stinks, or because they're concerned about problems down the road, neurological or otherwise. Maybe they're not thinking that at all. Maybe they just don't like to have to apply it 4 or 5 or 6 times a day. So our product is world beating, and that's proven through rigorous research and studies, including in peer-reviewed journals. I mean, this is really it's a big deal. You only have to apply it when you wake up and when you go to bed, and you don't know it's there unless you want to. You can have a non-scent version or a scented version. We discovered that people kept going like this, and they're like, oh, it must not be here anymore. I don't smell it. They thought it was not working. It was still there, and it was still working. That's kind of an aside, but that's part of what you do when you have a business and you have a product. You're going to look for the best way to serve your customers. The thing about Liveful, besides having access to employees, customers, and other bigger clients, which include governments and NGOs, suppliers, the gospel is all throughout this. But Liveful has said there are major moral, ethical issues embedded in the mindset and the practices of big pharma, and lives are being lost. People are dying because of big pharma's vision to shelve products because they won't have a 60% margin. And they could invest billions of dollars in these products, and then they still will shelve them because they say, it's not going to be a big enough return. It's not going to be fast enough. there are other practices that we look at, and we look at it from a biblical worldview, and we say, you've got something that can save lives. Why don't you give it away for free? If you're just going to shove and lose money, give it away, save lives, and they won't. So some of the issues, it's like a David and Goliath situation. We're seeking to transform an entire industry. Isaiah 61, later on, you can actually read through it. That'll be your homework, maybe. I want to highlight a couple of phrases here, starting with halfway through, no, actually about the end of verse 4, where I'm not going to unpack this exegetically. I would love to do that. And please forgive me for seeming to spiritualize, but we've thought through this a lot. I've just got to get to the bottom line for the sake of time. They actually does refer to what today we would call Christ followers, Christians. They, Christians, will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. That's that doxological motivation that I told you about. And what we are doing for the display of God's glory, go back to to verse 1 and verse 2. And you're seeing an anointing to proclaim the good news of the gospel to the poor, and to bind up the brokenhearted, and to proclaim freedom to the captives, and release from the darkness for the prisoners, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And I'm not going to spiritualize. I will also include the day of the vengeance of our God. That's part of the package. I can't unpack it, but yes, there are ways to show the world that there are right ways to do things, and that we might suffer God's wrath if we don't do the right things the right way. Look at this later on, because what you're going to discover is, we're talking about what BAM is and what BAM can do. That's our second question. Now I'll answer it faster. BAM can glorify God and contribute to the common good. You remember from Socrates, or let's go straight to Jesus. When the common good is a concept that, although we want very specific people to specifically know the one and only specific Savior, which is the Lord Jesus Christ, if we can also bring other types of good to larger numbers of people, and they start to recognize it's the Christians who are doing that, then absolutely we want to do that. We can bless God and we can bless people through doing good business. And what I mean by that is, we have created means through Business's mission to fulfill what some people call the cultural mandate. Here's the Baptist kicking in, the preacher. I wanted it to align grammatically, and I wanted great in front of everything. So the cultural mandate became the great mandate. Go back and look at Genesis 1:28 and 2:15, where God gives us stewardship of creation. We are to steward faithfully all of creation. And then now you're thinking, hey, the environmental bottom line. Yep, exactly. What about the great commandment? Love God. There's a spiritual dimension. Love our neighbors. That's spiritual. That's social. Great Commission. Make disciples of all nations. That's spiritual. It's social. It's all of it. It's all over the place. If you think about BAM, the way we define it and practice it, if you think about Isaiah 61, you can find all three of these greats, by the way, in Isaiah 61. So that's your homework. Look through and see where you find these three greats, or the four bottom lines, the fourfold bottom lines. That's your homework, okay? I am going to wrap up, getting real close. Just to say, how do you do BAM? First of all, hopefully now you've realized you can, if you want to. You can if you've thought God's calling you to, but you just didn't think that was quite as noble a calling as being a pastor or traditional missionary. Or to the flip side, you're doing business and you never realized the power of business to bring gospel transformation, and that you as a minister, a ministering steward of a business, whether you own it, whether you run it, whether you're somebody else owns it and you're down here on the totem pole for now, okay, get your skills under your belt and go start a BAM business if you feel inclined towards being an entrepreneur. But yeah, the point is, you can do it. And I'm not saying everyone's going to be successful all the time. In fact, to be very honest, if you're trying to do if you're going to start a business and your bottom line is financial, you're still not likely to succeed after 2 years. Much less after 5 years. The statistics are kind of dismal, even more so in the types of places that really need somebody to do business. Now you add the mission component, the BAM component, and think about some BAM businesses actually start churches as well. The very specific fruit that you can see. But I'm telling you, go do a business, go do a church. It's quadrupling the difficulty. So don't do it unless you know that God is in it. Don't do it unless God's calling you to do it. And then be ready to fail forward, maybe more than once, but you can do it. And that's the point. So here's where you start. Go to the businessasmission.com website specifically, but we have two websites. And I didn't even ask permission from Dr. Jesus or Dr. Kelly. I hope I'm not causing a problem by actually promoting websites here or promoting the organization.
No problem.
All right, so I'm wrapping up. I'm giving you some great resources. We have at businessasmission.com and at bamglobal.com some phenomenal resources that can help you get started by learning more about the concept, learning more about, and this is kind of what it looks like, how you can actually do it. And there are steps that you can go through. There are resources that you can access here that will get you kicked off. My dear friend, the co-founder of Crossover Global with me, the mission church planting organization, but also a business professional in his own right. We say, we wrote this together, but we put his name because he's more important than I am. And I'm saying, I'm not being facetious. I mean, he's an amazing godly leader. So take this seriously when he says, or we say together, but not all Christians are called to full-time ministry, but all are called to minister full-time. Not all are called to be professional ministers, but we are all called to be ministering professionals. And if you think, bam, business as mission is not your thing, but think about career as mission. Think about your profession as mission. Yeah, but I've already retired. Great, retirement as mission. The point is, don't get stuck in the mindset that mission is done the way we've always thought it's done through religious professionals. All kinds of doors are open, increasingly so. You're more important than ever to help fulfill the great mandate, to help fulfill the great commandment, and to help fulfill the Great Commission.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Joao. Appreciate it so much. I think it's not only has it inspired us, but reminded us of the importance of making sure that we have clarity with what we do in life. And I like what you said towards the end, is like, make sure that this is something God has called you to do, or just like any other thing. But the good thing is that it affirms people. It's like, I've seen people do business for 20, 30, 40 years, and suddenly they hear this message and they say, my goodness, I have been doing business for the wrong reason. But I want to change that right now. So there's always opportunity for people to envision this. And it made me remember two books. One of them is called Monday Morning Atheist. And it talks about, the need for people to be able to connect what they do from Monday to Friday or Saturday with God. And the other one is Shepherding Horses. It's a book that basically allows those that are in pulpit ministries or leading churches to enable, empower, anoint people to go out into the marketplace and do God's work out there. So it's really exciting to hear everything you've shared, and thank you so much. I've opened it up for people. We don't have too much time, but if people have any questions, maybe we can take a minute or two briefly.
I have a question. Whoops, I see one come up, but I'll ask mine very quickly. Well, let's take our audience first, and then I'll follow up.
Okay,
go ahead.
So yeah, one of them is just basically asking for the BAM website. So it's I can write it down here. So it's BAM Global, right?
bamglobal.org.
Okay.
And businessasmission.com is actually going to be probably the best starting point for most people.
Okay.
So businessasmission.com is more of a resource site. BAM Global is more explaining who we are, what we do, events, and we do have some more academic resources at BAM Global. We've done 35 think tank processes that have resulted in 35 white papers about, it could be BAM in church planting, BAM in human trafficking, which I didn't even get to talk about, BAM in unreached peoples, how did local churches get involved in BAM, all kinds of great resources on both the websites, so check them out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that I remember we were talking probably 2 weeks ago, getting ready for these, and And one of the things that I appreciate so much, and thank for sharing the website, is that somehow it's a ministry that it's a space in between connecting the dots, or helping those who want to connect the dots and to be trained more in this dimension, and to get resources to think further into how to do this. So I think it's going to be of great help to those who can connect that. So
we would say I hope it's genuine humility. At least we like to think of ourselves as the honest broker, not a player. We are in a space, in a whole ecosystem, where all we want is to make everybody else as successful and fruitful as they can possibly be. We're not competing with others, because there are mission organizations doing BAM, there are groups of business professionals, there are incubators, there are accelerators, there are investment funds. We want to serve all of them in that space.
wonderful.
And
Kelly,
that
you
leads
have a
to
question?
the question, yes, that I have is, okay, so you're both internationally, but also have companies in the US, because I noticed Coca-Cola Consolidated and, an affiliation within the US. So can organizations here in the US become connected to BAM and have their Christians within their organization? Okay, tfactor.org. Okay, so is that it? You want to share a bit about that?
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
by
I'd
the
love
way,
to.
Joao, we have been engaged, and we actually hosted here on campus a T Factor event in December last year.
Perfect.
And we're about to do next
Okay.
month a faith-driven entrepreneur event
Yeah.
here. So that's part of the network.
Yep.
That's part of the connection that we're doing.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and that's us being the honest broker. Here, we're promoting these others right here. Dr. Kelly, I'm glad that you mentioned. So Coca-Cola Consolidated is not Coca-Cola Incorporated.
Right.
It's the largest Coca-Cola bottling company.
Right.
It's a publicly traded company, largely owned by the fourth generation of ownership, and they're believers. And they said, you know what? They just got tired of the governments and industry pressure and others saying, you can't do ministry here. And they said, yes, we can. They did all the homework from an HR perspective, a legal perspective, and then from an application perspective to say, how can a publicly traded or a large private company do ministry by way of business in a way that is legal and ethical and impactful, relevant, credible? And so this T Factor, and I hope it's .org, I'm pretty sure it is their free service to all Christian business owners and professionals who want to know more. They've put this package together. They do the seminars top notch. I mean, it's what you would expect from a company called Coca-Cola Consolidated. And then faith-driven, Dr. Jesus has already mentioned. We love the faith-driven people. We're partners with them in other countries in the world, not in the US, actually. We're partners. We're helping them, and they're helping us in other countries in the world. So lots of resources at Faith-Driven Entrepreneur, also Faith-Driven Investor. And they have free podcasts and articles, blog articles, and resources, et cetera. So
Wonderful.
That's awesome. We need it here in the US as much as the other country. Maybe, yeah. I mean, we really need to have that open pathway with a lot of the legal constraints that we're currently under. So that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Joao. We've really enjoyed it, and we hope this is the first but not the last time we get to exchange wonderful things, and we're really happy for people to dig deeper as they go into the website that you just shared. And thanks for being here. And as we wrap up today, we just want to mention that we're so thankful for those of you who joined us, and remind you that the reason why we're doing this is because here at Mid-America Christian University, we have a commitment to make sure that people grow in their leadership capacities and their business capacities, and they integrate faith. Two of the ways is through the program that I get the honor and opportunity to lead, the Master of Arts in Leadership. It's an online degree, and it has very different concentrations and one of them is business, but and ministry, but everything is at the end like connected, and we make sure through everything we do that people get to think through that. We were just recognized not too long ago and listed um, this year as one of the best programs in the US by Wiley University Services. And that's a privilege, but at the same time, it's a big burden that we carry because we want to make sure that we're training people for God's work out there. And it's a high commitment we have as a business school and as a university. And we also have our signature Master of Business Administration program. It could be done either here on ground or online. It's been also recognized as one of the top in the state among private universities. So I'm sure people, if you do not know about this, please go into our website and check more on that. And at the same time, as we move forward, you can go to our social media and explore the two specific programs or any other program we may offer in the university. And I'm sure it's going to be of help to you as you grow into your next stage. And as we move forward, we just want to say that we're going to be sharing next month 2 events. One is going to be online and the other one is going to be on ground. The online is a webinar. We're going to be sharing more details about that through our social media, and feel free to join and feel free to pass it along. It's not only for those who are here local, but global. So we actually had some people from Asia join, from Mexico, and some people register also from other parts of the world. And then people can not only get to watch this one that we're doing today, but also the previous and the future ones that we should be doing. So Kelly, I don't know if you have a couple comments.
Yes, I just want to thank Dr. John for coming. That was so encouraging and exciting, and also remind everyone that we do have our webinar posted at www.macu.edu/leadership dash connection. And we hope that you'll check out some of the others if you want to go back and review what Dr. John shared with us. And please provide your feedback to us. It's important, and we want to know your participation in viewing and any other comments or thoughts you may have. And we look forward to you coming again next week or next month.
Yes. Well,
and we're excited about next month with Dr. Pan and Dr. Kirkpatrick.
Yes. Let me
from Stanford University, talking about business analytics and how we can integrate Christian faith into that.
Definitely. Here's the information, and we have, as you all know, this is a new age in leading business. It related as it relates to analytics and how to make sure we get the biblical perspective into it, and so how to develop a Christian mind for analytics and some biblical examples. It's going to be great. So for the first time, we're going to have 2 guest speakers in one of these webinars. So it's going to be fun, and we just hope that we get to enjoy and keep on growing. Thank you so much for those of you who joined today. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Joao, for your wonderful and valuable contribution to this webinar. And looking forward for our continued interaction. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.